It's Tuesday, June 24th, 2025. Welcome to Make It Make Sense. I'm Granthermes. Today on the show, we just might have a ceasefire between Iran and Israel. Maybe. Because nothing is easy or simple in the news these days, because about an hour after I dropped yesterday's episode, Trump announced that the fighting between Israel and Iran was coming to an end, except it might not be. I'll explain why, where we're at, and why President Trump is so obsessed with winning a Nobel Peace Prize. But first, make sure you're following and subscribe to Make It Make Sense with Granthermes wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe and hit the bell for notifications on YouTube if you're watching there. Sign up for the Make It Make Sense Substack, where I've got a new article coming out tomorrow all about the numbers problem that DHS and ICE is having right now. You'll read it and you'll understand. It's just $5 a month to get access to that and a lot of other great content I've got going up there all the time. And if you don't want to do that, please share the show on social media. It's MIMS Newspod. That's MIMS Newspod, all one word on every platform. You can tag me. I'm at Granthermes. That's HERMES on X and Bluesky, and at Granthermes TV on everything else. All right, let's get to the show. Hey listeners, if you've listened to the show, you know it's all about breaking down the news in a way that actually makes sense. No spin, real reporting, and smart conversations. We've built a growing, loyal, and highly engaged community of listeners who aren't just tuning in, they're talking back, they're sharing episodes and taking action. They're informed, curious, and they care about where they spend their time and money. That's where you come in. If you're a brand, organization, or a cause that aligns with trust, truth, and just making the world a little easier to live in, we want to partner with you. Whether you're launching a new product, pushing a policy, or just want your message heard by an audience that values insight over outrage, let's make it make sense together. For ad rates, custom campaigns, and sponsorship packages, reach out now at ads@matchbookmediapod.com. That's ads@matchbookmediapod.com. Because the smartest conversations deserve the smartest partners. Okay, let's get on with the show. Around 6 p.m. last night, Trump announced that Iran and Israel had reached a ceasefire again on his social media platform, Truth Social, because it appears that we're just going to keep getting our global diplomacy in between ads for gold phones and prepper supplies, but whatever. In this long announcement, Trump said that at midnight, the ceasefire was going to go into effect, that Iran would stop its final mission about 12 hours after that, and Israel another 12 hours after that. Why it was set up that way, I don't really know. It's actually a little confusing, but here's what he said, at least in part because, like I said, this post was long. He said, on the assumption that everything works as it should, which it will, I would like to congratulate both countries, Israel and Iran, on having the stamina, courage, and intelligence to end what should be called the 12-day war, which he put in all caps. This is a war that could have gone on for years and destroyed the entire Middle East, but it didn't and never will, with an exclamation point. God bless Israel, God bless Iran, God bless the Middle East, God bless the United States of America, and God bless the world, which he wrote again in all caps with an exclamation point. Now, so far, Trump is the only one calling this thing the 12-day war, but he is nothing if not a master of branding, so it'll probably stick, but he also wants a definitive name for a reason that I'll get to in a little bit here. But as soon as that announcement went out, there was a lot of confusion because it took hours for both Iran and Israel to say that they had agreed to stop fighting. At first, Iran said they didn't even have language and hadn't even been sent any by the U.S. or by Israel about a ceasefire. Israel stayed quiet. And then when Iranian officials told the wire service outlets like Reuters that they'd received the ceasefire agreement but hadn't agreed to it yet, Israel said that they had. And finally, both sides came forward and said they had agreed to this ceasefire. But it was, for a little while there, really tense. Because normally when these things happen, it's at the very least a joint statement that would have been put out, again, at the very least, by Israel and the U.S., but ideally all three countries in some official capacity that allows all sides to save some face on the world stage and at home and shows a sense of unity in the goal of peace. And also brokering a peace like this, if that's what we want to call what Trump actually did here, because there's some reporting that both Israel and Iran were starting to get low on missiles and were looking for a way to end the conflict before our bombing campaign over the weekend. But an announcement like this would also normally be done in an address from the White House, from Trump, especially if he's looking for as much credit as he is. But instead what we got was a post on social media. We also didn't get a real end to the fighting, because even though Trump said in his announcement that the final missions were already launched and both Iran and Israel were going to carry them out, he seemed to think that it would be a small sort of tail-end bombing run kind of thing. Instead, Israel fired more missiles that hit a radar facility near the Iranian capital of Tehran about 3.5 hours after the ceasefire had started, because it said that Iran had already violated the ceasefire by firing missiles an hour and a half after the ceasefire had started. Iran is still denying that. But apparently, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu spoke to Trump and agreed to not fire off any more missiles, and Iran said they won't fire off anything if Israel doesn't. And Trump is pretty angry about this. Here's what he said to reporters on the White House lawn this morning, and a word of warning: if swearing isn't your thing, he swears here.
Israel says that Iran violated the peace agreement and the ceasefire agreement. Do you believe that Iran is still committed to peace?
Yeah, I do. They violated it, but Israel violated it too.
Are you questioning if Israel is committed?
Israel, as soon as we made the deal, they came out and they dropped a load of bombs, the likes of which I'd never seen before. The biggest load that we've seen. I'm not happy with Israel. You know, when I say, okay, now you have 12 hours, you don't go out in the first hour and just drop everything you have on them. So I'm not happy with them. I'm not happy with Iran either. But I'm really unhappy if Israel's going out this morning because of one rocket that didn't land, that was shot, perhaps by mistake, that didn't land. I'm not happy about that. You know what? We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the fuck they're doing. Do you understand that?
Do you have to respond to Iran?
So, first of all, that is not language that we are used to hearing from an American president, at least not publicly. And I know that stuff shouldn't surprise me because I talk like that in my daily life as well, so do a lot of people. But when you're the president criticizing two nations, one of which has a nuclear weapon, one of which you accuse of having a nuclear weapon, and they right now at best have a delicate truce, I don't know, maybe don't drop the F-bomb and tell them they don't know what they're doing. I don't know. And on top of that, Trump also said that before heading to a meeting with our NATO allies, so our North American and military European allies who were trying to restart talks with Iran about its nuclear program before we bombed over the weekend. Our allies in Europe seemingly were completely in the dark about the plan for our bombing, and right now they generally don't trust the United States or Trump because we backed off supporting Ukraine, we backed off some of the financial support that we've given to NATO over the years, and we've essentially stopped working towards peace in Europe. Now, Trump's announcement of a ceasefire also did not say anything about how damaged the nuclear sites were, although Trump did say in a separate post online, quote, both Israel and Iran wanted to stop the war equally. It was my great honor to destroy all nuclear facilities and capability and then stop the war, which he put in all caps. But the thing is that we don't actually know if the nuclear facilities were destroyed. In fact, U.S. military and intelligence officials are still scrambling, which is the word used by the Washington Post this week, to figure out how much damage was done. Now, likely the sites at Natanz and Esfahan, which are the two smaller sites, are decimated, which is also where the majority of the equipment that Iran was using to enrich uranium was. But the site at Fordo, that's the super secret, super secure facility under a mountain that we hit with 420,000 pounds of bombs, well, that might actually still be intact somehow. And that's the one that everyone is kind of worried about. Trump also didn't say anything about restarting the nuclear program negotiations that he wants Iran to come back to the table for, or whether we know about where Iran might have moved 400 kilograms or about 900 pounds of uranium that could be used to build at least a few nuclear weapons because Iran moved those things out of its nuclear facilities ahead of the U.S. bombing campaign because, according to White House advisors who talked to the New York Times, it was Trump's posts on social media last week that were the biggest threat to operational security or keeping the bombing a secret, meaning in an extremely high-stakes, potentially domestically illegal military operation, it was the President of the United States who was the most dangerous person to the success of the entire thing. And speaking of domestically, we got to look at the letter that Trump has sent to Congress that he's required to by law about the bombing strike, and we got a little bit more insight into how the White House is rationalizing how it could do this without telling Congress or getting its approval. So the White House says it is in compliance with the War Powers Resolution, which I talked a little bit about yesterday, but essentially it requires the White House to notify Congress within 48 hours of a military operation with an expectation that that notification happens before the operation is carried out, but it's not required. It also says a mission can only happen like this under the War Powers Resolution if there's an imminent threat to the U.S. And that might be a little tricky here, because the definition of imminent, depending on which lawyer you talk to, might be a little bit different. And like I've said a lot, the intelligence right now from our agencies and the international community is at best mixed, that Iran could make a nuclear weapon quickly, but the majority of intelligence and nuclear watchdogs say Iran was nowhere near building a bomb, or even if they had started, it would likely take months to maybe more than a year to finish. Now, I also know that Tulsi Gabbard, the director of U.S. National Intelligence, testified that exact thing to Congress just a few months ago, but then after Trump got angry at her last week, switched her stance to say that Iran could build a bomb within a matter of weeks. But there just isn't anything that's been reported by us or by international agencies that backs that up right now. At least not with some really solid evidence. So for the White House to say that there was an imminent need to carry out a military operation on Iran because of its nuclear program is a little hard to square here. Again, and I shouldn't need to say this, but if I don't, somebody will accuse me of thinking that Iran should have a nuke. Nobody thinks that. It's bad for everyone alive today. It's bad for them if Iran has a nuclear weapon. It's something we've been worried about since 1974, and they've yet to come close to making one, but that doesn't mean they should have one. And this idea of what is or isn't an imminent threat has been used by Republican and Democratic presidents alike since this War Powers Resolution was put into place in 1973. So it's not like Trump is the first president to massage what some of these definitions are. We're just getting the rationale from the White House in this letter. And that brings us to what happens next. And the answer is, we don't really know. Everyone's kind of holding their breath. It looks like Iran is backing off of closing the Strait of Hormuz, which is where 1 out of every 5 gallons of oil on the planet crosses through. So that's good. But we don't know how long this peace will last. Neither Iran nor Israel are exactly reliable players when it comes to these things. Iran isn't what's called a rational actor in political terms. That's because they're a theocracy and they have a religious vendetta against Israel and the West. And Israel has broken ceasefire agreements in the past, most recently with Hamas in Gaza on a number of occasions, in fact. And Netanyahu there has made it his mission to wipe out Hamas. And there are worries that that same line of thinking could be turned on Iran in some kind of surprise attack from Israel during this ceasefire. But at least for the moment, missiles have stopped. And that has given Trump some time to bring up the Nobel Peace Prize. And we should talk about this before the end of this episode because he's going to be talking about it a lot. You're going to hear people talk about it. And you should understand where that's coming from. So for years, Trump has wanted a Nobel Peace Prize. In a post last Saturday, he complained, saying that he should have gotten one for a draft agreement to potentially stop fighting between forces in Congo and Rwanda. He said he should, but won't get a peace prize for stopping fighting that broke out between Pakistan and India. And while Pakistan said they were going to nominate Trump, India was clear that Trump had nothing to do with ending that fighting. Trump said he should have gotten one for ongoing economic agreements between Serbia and Kosovo that were agreed to during his first term, and for brokering a deal that never actually went through between Egypt and Ethiopia over a dam in the Nile during his first term as well. And he really wants one for this bombing strike in Iran. But the thing is they don't give out peace prizes to people who drop bombs. The whole point of the Nobel Peace Prize is that it goes to, quote, the person who shall have done the most or the best work for fraternity between nations, the abolition or reduction of standing armies, and for the holding and promotion of peace congresses, according to the Nobel Prize organization itself. And also, at least partially, the character of the winner is also part of the judging process. And given past winners, bombing a country to stop a conflict doesn't really fit that criteria. Now, presidents have won this in the past. It's not an anti-American thing. 4, to be exact. Teddy Roosevelt for ending the Russian-Japanese War in 1905. Woodrow Wilson, who created the League of Nations, which later became the UN. Jimmy Carter, who won his, though, after he was put in for his humanitarian work. And Barack Obama, who won it, according to the Nobel Committee, for creating a new climate of international diplomacy, specifically around nuclear disarmament and addressing climate change, though when he won it, he hadn't really been in office for a full year. He'd only been there for like 9 months and hadn't really done much of anything. So when he did win this, a lot of people were scratching their heads, and I think a lot of people still are. But since his first term, it's been more than that for Trump. Trump has been obsessed with the fact that Obama has a peace prize and he doesn't. I mean, there's a lot of speculation that Trump got into the 2016 race in the first place because he hated Barack Obama so much, because Obama made fun of Trump on stage during the 2011 White House Correspondents' Dinner while Trump was peddling the racist lie that Obama wasn't born in the U.S., and it was there that Trump essentially made it his mission to undo or outdo all things Obama. And this week, a sitting member of Congress has nominated Trump for a Nobel Peace Prize, and that is Georgia Congressman Buddy Carter, his actual name, from Georgia, who said that he nominated Trump for his historic role in brokering a ceasefire between Israel and Iran and preventing the world's largest state sponsor of terrorism from obtaining the most lethal weapon on the planet. Which brings us really full circle back to the ceasefire, the bombing in Iran, and the nuclear deal. Because Trump says he was forced to bomb Iran over its nuclear program, except the program wouldn't have existed if Trump hadn't pulled out of the nuclear deal during his first term that Obama had negotiated while he was president. And Trump is now seeking a Nobel Peace Prize for essentially cleaning up the international mess he made out of spite. But it does sort of hinge on the fact that this ceasefire actually holds, and right now it is, but it's one of those things where we're just going to have to wait and see. And that is it for today's episode. Please rate and review the show on whatever podcast app you listen to this on. Like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications on YouTube. Sign up for the Make It Make Sense Substack. It's just $5 a month. You get access to a bunch of bonus content up there that I'm putting up all the time. And as always, share the show on social media. It's MIMS Newspod. That's MIMS Newspod. All one word on every platform. I am at Granthermes on Twitter and Bluesky, and at Granthermes TV on everything else. Thank you so much for listening today. I'm Granthermes, and I'll talk to you on Thursday.